4, CC Sabathia, a 3.96 ERA, 4.31 in postseason experience. Going up against Adrian Sampson, a 3.72 ERA, no postseason experience. I've got the Yankees avoiding the sweep, 3-1 Rangers. Then when it comes to the star power, who's been the best of the best for each team so far? DJ LeMahieu, a 2.3 WAR for the Yankees. Joey Gallo, 3.2 for the Rangers. I've got the Rangers going to the World Series, another upset of the Yankees. They will be facing the Milwaukee Brewers in the World Series. Game 1, we would see Brandon Woodruff going up against Mike Minor. Both elite postseason guys. Minor's been better, though. I got the Rangers winning Game 1. In Game 2, we have got Zach Davies v. Ariel Jurado. Davies is elite in the postseason. Jurado still... You don't know what you're going to get from him in the postseason. I've got Davies and the Brewers not in the series up at 1. Heading to Texas. Game 3. Chase Anderson, Lance Lynn. Anderson doesn't have the postseason experience. Lynn does. This is in Texas. I've got Texas taking a 2-1 advantage. Game 4, Jimmy Nelson v. Adrian Sampson. Jimmy Nelson has been terrible this year. Adrian Sampson's been great. I've got the Rangers taking a commanding 3-1 series lead. We don't revisit pitching matchups, and this comes down to the star power on each team. When you take up Christian Yelich and Joey Gallo together, Yelich wins. Moustakas, their second biggest star outside of the pitching staff for the Rangers is Sean Kelly. Obviously Moustakas. And then Hader v. Pence for the next two biggest guys. Hader, the Milwaukee Brewers win the 2019 World Series in 7 games. World Series MVP, Christian Yelich. And I think this is my prediction right now, is a Brewers-Rangers World Series. And you might call me crazy for having the Texas Rangers in this World Series, right? Because they have to go through the gauntlet of the American League playoffs. They'd have to face the Rays right off the bat, then go to Houston, then go play the Yankees. I would have them falling short in that World Series just because the Brewers have more star power. The Rangers definitely have the pitching advantage in that series outside of Zach Davies. So the Brewers would have to ride Davies and Yelich, Moustakas, Hader in that series. But I could see the Rangers even winning the World Series. So they are definitely my dark horse pick. And we talked on the show last week about how Mike Minor to the Braves would make perfect sense. But the Rangers are in the thick of things here. They have get the standings out. They have a 1.5 game advantage over the Boston Red Sox for that second AL wildcard spot. I don't believe they're going to win the division. I think they've dug themselves too big of a hole, sitting at 9 games back of the Houston Astros. But they match up nicely against the Astros in a postseason series, and that's why I have them beating those Houston Astros in the playoffs pretty convincingly, too. It wasn't very close, in my opinion, as to who would win that series. I have the Rangers winning 3-1. Now, I don't like the matchup of Verlander versus Jurado, which is what you would see, because Minor would have had to pitch in the wild card game against the Rays. But outside of that, I like the matchups. I like Minor beating Cole, I like Lynn beating Valdez, and I like Minor beating Verlander. They match up nicely in that series. Regular season's a different story, but the postseason is a different beast, and they have the pitching to go in there. Mike Minor, elite postseason experience. Ariel Jurado's been great so far for the Rangers this season. Lance Lynn has that postseason experience as well. And Adrian Sampson has been great so far too. So while there may be knocks on this Rangers pitching staff, they have Minor leading them, followed by Jurado's been great, followed by Lance Lynn, who has experience in the postseason, and then Adrian Sampson, who's been great too. So do not sleep on this Texas Rangers team. They are definitely my dark horse pick for the World Series. And I have them going all the way to the World Series. Again, they match up nicely. Very nicely. World Series again. We've got the Brewers-Rangers. Brewers winning in 7 games. Let's take a look at the All-Star Game balloting. Let's take an update on that. And who I believe should be candidates. We're only going to go through from first base to third base this week. On the American League side, Miguel Cabrera, Edwin Encarnacion, Jose Abreu, and Carlos Santana are my 4 candidates there. To trim that down, we're going to go Encarnacion, Abreu, and Santana. In the National League, we've got Bell, Alonso, and Freeman. Pretty simple there. Bell, Alonso, Freeman moving on to the next round. In the National League, I've got LeMahieu, second baseman, American League, DJ LeMahieu, Tommy La Stella, and Brandon Lowe. And on the National League side, I've got Mike Moustakas, Ketel Marte, and Cesar Hernandez. Third baseman in the American League, it's crowded. Candidates for me, Hunter Dozier, Alex Bregman, Gio Urshela, Matt Chapman, and Rafael Devers. Just on that down, we're going to go Dozier, Bregman, and Chapman in the American League. In the National League, pretty cut and dry, Arenado, Rendon, and Escobar. That is your update so far on the balloting. Again, none of that's public. That's just who I think should be making it to the general election and getting out of this primary. Let's get one thing straight right off the bat. Dallas Keuchel isn't Justin Verlander from a couple of seasons ago. He's not going to show up and immediately turn into one of the game's elite pitchers again. He's going to have his issues. Mr. Keuchel won't be perfect, but the Braves won't ask him to be. They will simply ask him to give them innings and give their offense a chance to win games for him. If he does that, the Braves' rotation, which has been thoroughly disappointing, might start to round into form. The former Houston Astros ace has agreed to a one-year contract worth an estimated $21.21 million with the Braves. The $21 million deal is a bit of a technicality here. It establishes his base pay for the rest of the year. When you prorate that total, Keuchel will make about $13 million for the remainder of the 2019 season. But hey, $21 million sounds better. Keuchel, like Craig Kimbrell, hit free agency for the first time this offseason, looking to cash in a career's worth of achievements with a big contract. But the market dried up for Keuchel, who couldn't find a long-term deal after hitting 30 before the 2018 season. Instead, Keuchel found himself jobless as the winter's thaw warmed and spring began. The market remained at a standstill as the draft loomed. No team was going to give up a draft pick for Keuchel, and unfortunately, that meant he lost 2+ months of his age 31 season to nothing more than a flawed system. But now that he's a Brave, what can we expect? I'm going to go over Keuchel the pitcher, and then also look at how he fits. Keuchel's arsenal. One thing to know right off the bat with the former Astro is his velocity isn't his game. Keuchel will throw 5 pitches, but his primary pitch is a 89 mile per hour sinker. On a good day, he might hit 92 miles per hour, but he hasn't hit 93 miles per hour since 2017. The sinker won't yield many strikeouts, but at his best, he'll get a ton of low exit velocity and easy grounders. It's worth mentioning that last season the sinker wasn't nearly as effective, and hitters were hitting it with about 5 more miles per hour in exit velocity. That's a big swing and produced a difference in WOBA of 56 points. The sinker is the star here, not so much because it's his best pitch, but because he'll use it 40 to 50% of the time. Against lefties, Keuchel's game is basically sinker-slider and almost nothing else. The slider gets great depth and will come to the plate at about 10 miles per hour, slower than his fastball. Because of its movement, it's often called a curveball. While it's one of 2 pitches lefties will usually see, he will also throw a lot of sliders to righties. In fact, until last season, it was his secondary pitch against righties as well. It's his best pitch when he needs a strikeout. As I said, one change we saw with Keuchel last season was that he really pushed his cutter and changeup against righties. The cutter has been a work in progress for Keuchel, who upped his usage of the pitch to 15% last year and made it his preferred secondary offering to righties. Truthfully, that change may have been performance-driven. The cutter is a science and can take years to master. Keuchel shaved off 100 points in WOBA using the cutter last year, so perhaps he's learned to utilize the offering better. That combined with weaker performance from his slider could lead Keuchel to follow a similar track as CC Sabathia and Anibal Sanchez, who both relied more on their cutters as they aged. His changeup has usually been a pretty solid pitch that dies at the plate. It'll be interesting to see if the Braves try to get him to use it more. Despite low velocity, he still gets a good amount of whiffs on the change, and it's proven difficult to elevate. Finally, Keuchel will go to a four-seamer as well. Velocity-wise, it's similar to his sinker. It moves horizontally like his changeup, but it's got a bit less sink. The result is interesting. Hitters hit the balls more frequently than they do their changeup with better elevation, but the results aren't much better. He'll give up a few more homers with this pitch, but it's a nice weapon to confuse hitters with. How Keuchel fits. A pitcher who relies on deception and stubbornness to overcome low velocity. If you think the Braves have just added a left-handed Julio Teheran, you probably aren't alone. But the thing that sets these two pitchers apart is what happens after a hitter puts the ball in play. Teheran is a fly ball pitcher, whereas hitters often struggle to elevate the ball against Keuchel. Now, consider the Braves a team built greatly on defense, especially on the infield. Keuchel is a perfect fit in that aspect. Is Keuchel a sexy pickup? Absolutely not. That would have been Kimbrel. But in many ways, Keuchel is a better choice of the two. The Braves' rotation is in shambles right now, having endured a terrible season thus far from Mike Foltynewicz, and to put it nicely, an uneven campaign from Kevin Gausman. Teheran has been shockingly solid, even though his advanced metrics point to serious regression. And then there's the young duo of Max Fried and Mike Soroka. Fried has never pitched more than 118 and 2/3 innings in a season. He's on pace for 172. Soroka has crossed the 140 inning mark twice with a career best 153 and 2/3 innings in 2017. But he also just threw 56 1/3 innings last season, and if you include the 9 1/3 innings he threw at Gwinnett earlier this season, he is on pace for roughly the same amount of frames as Fried is. That's a dicey proposition. It seems unlikely that the Braves made the decision to target Keuchel recently, but had it worked out like that, it also wouldn't be a surprise. Over the last 3 weeks, Gausman has been especially bad, a 10 ERA in his last 4 starts, and Foltynewicz has been surrendering home runs by the bushel. Even Fried has looked, dare I say, iffy of late. Keuchel may not be capable of another sub-3 ERA like he had in 2014, 2015, and 2017. But he doesn't really have to be an ace. What the Braves need from Keuchel is the same consistency and, for the most part, durability he showed in Houston. They need the guy who threw strikes, kept the ball in the yard, and averaged 6 innings per start. If he's that version of Keuchel, he's worth every penny for how he will stabilize the pitching staff. Moving forward, Keuchel doesn't solve everything. If Foltynewicz and Gausman continue their struggles, another starter could be a useful target. The bullpen remains a big question outside of Luke Jackson. The Braves seem unlikely to consider any offensive upgrades, but they'll have to do something when Ender Inciarte returns. With Keuchel in the fold, the Braves certainly look better. It's also nice to put that financial flexibility to work. But Alex Anthopoulos' job is not done. In the meantime, the Braves and their fans hope to see Keuchel put on a show for the remainder of the season as he looks to land a better deal, with no qualifying offer attached this time, next offseason. On July 18, 2018, the future of the Toronto Raptors significantly changed when Raptors President of Basketball of Operations Masai Ujiri and Raptors General Manager Bobby Webster made a blockbuster deal with the San Antonio Spurs as they acquired Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green for DeMar DeRozan, Jakob Poeltl, and a first-round pick in the 2019 NBA Draft. The trade needs to be compared to a Toronto Blue Jays blockbuster trade on December 5th, 1990, when General Manager Pat Gillick acquired Joe Carter and Roberto Alomar from the San Diego Padres for Tony Fernandez and Fred McGriff. At the time of the Raptors deal last summer, there was a high amount of skepticism among fans of Raptors Nation. DeRozan was an extremely popular Raptors player, became good friends of star point guard Kyle Lowry, and had indicated that he wanted to be a Raptor for the rest of his NBA